Well, good afternoon and welcome to Bible Book Club. Today we are reading from outside at my home here in Theodosia, Missouri. And hopefully you can see a little bit of beauty behind me, but we have just a really beautiful place here where we live, and we're thankful for it. And today we're going to be reading from Nehemiah 12 and 13. I'm really appreciative of Tori McWilliams, who's been filling in for me while I've been busy with family matters, and so when I didn't have the time to do this, I'm grateful that she's been helping out. And we're going to get going with Nehemiah 12 and 13. So let's begin with Nehemiah 12. Now these are the priests and the Levites who came up with Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel, and Jeshua, Sariah, Jeremiah, Ezra, Amariah, Malach, Hattush, Shechaniah, Rahum, Meremoth, Edu, Ginnathoi, Abijah, Mijamin, Maadiah, Bilgah, Shemaiah, and Joiarib, Jedediah, Shalu, Emach, Hilkiah, and Jediah. These were the heads of the priests and their kinsmen in the days of Jeshua. The Levites were Jeshua, Binnui, Kadmiel, Sherebiah, Judah, and Mattaniah, who was in charge of the sons of thanksgiving, he and his brothers. Now that sounds like a good job. Also, Bakbukiah and Uni, their brothers, stood opposite them in their service divisions. Jeshua became the father of Joachim, and Joachim became the father of Eliashib, and Eliashib became the father of Joiada, and Joiada became the father of Jonathan, and Jonathan became the father of Jaddua. Now in the days of Joachim the priest, the heads of fathers' households were of Shariah, Moriah, of Jeremiah, Hananiah, of Ezra, Meshullam, of Amariah, Jehohanan, of Maluchi, Jonathan, of Shebaniah, Joseph, of Harim, Adnah, of Meraioth, Hilkiah, of Edo, Zechariah, of Ginnathon, Meshullam, of Abijah, Zikri, of Miniamin, of Moadiah, Piltai, of Bilgah, Shammua, of Shemaiah, Jehonathan, of Joiarib, Mattaniah, of Jediah, Uzi, of Shalai, Kalai, of Amok, Eber, of Hilkiah, Hashabiah, of Jediah, Nathanael. As for the Levites, the heads of fathers' households were registered in the days of Eliashib, Joiada, and Jehonan, and Jaddua. So were the priests in the region of Darius the Persian. The sons of Levi, the heads of fathers' households, were registered in the book of Chronicles, up to the days of Jehonan, the son of Eliashib. The heads of the Levites were Hashabiah, Sherebiah, and Jeshua, the son of Kadmiel, with their brothers opposite them, to praise and give thanks as prescribed by David the man of God, division corresponding to division. Mattaniah, Bakbukiah, Obadiah, Meshullam, Talmon, and Akub were gatekeepers, keeping watch at the storehouses of the gates. These served in the days of Joachim, the son of Jeshua, the son of Jozadak, and in the days of Nehemiah the governor, and Ezra the priest, and the scribe. Now at the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem, they sought out the Levites from all the places to bring them to Jerusalem, so that they might celebrate the dedication with gladness, with hymns and thanksgiving, and with songs, to the accompaniment of cymbals, harps, and lyres. So the sons of the singers were assembled from the district around Jerusalem, and from the villages of Netophathites, from Beth Gilgal, and from their fields in Geba and Asmaveth, for the singers had built themselves villages around Jerusalem. The priests and the Levites purified themselves. They also purified the people, the gates, and the wall. Then I had the leaders of Judah come up on top of the wall, and I appointed 2 great choirs, the first proceeding To the right, on top of the wall toward the refuse gate, Hoshea and half of the leaders of Judah followed them, with Azariah, Ezra, Meshullam, Judah, Benjamin, Shemaiah, Jeremiah, and some of the sons of the priests with trumpets, and Zechariah the son of Jonathan, the son of Shemaiah, the son of Mattaniah, the son of Micaiah, the son of Zakur, the son of Asaph, and his kinsmen, Shemaiah, Azarel, Melalai, Gilalai, Mai, Nathanael, Judah, and Hanani, with the musical instruments of David, the man of God, and Ezra the scribe went before them. At the fountain gate they went directly up by the steps of the city of David by the stairway to the wall above the house of David to the water gate on the east. The second choir proceeded to the left, while I followed them with half of the people on the wall, above the tower of furnaces to the broad wall, and above the gate of Ephraim, by the old gate, by the fish gate, the tower of Hananel, and the tower of the 100 as far as the sheep gate, and they stopped at the gate of the guard. Then the two choirs took their stand in the house of God. So did I, and half of the officials with me. And the priest Eliakim, Maaseiah, Miniamin, Micaiah, Elionai, Zechariah, and Hananiah with the trumpets, and Maaseiah, Shemaiah, Eleazar, Uzi, Jehonan, Melchijah, Elam, and Ezer, and the singers sang with Jezrahiah, their leader. And on that day they offered great sacrifices and rejoiced because God had given them great joy. Even the women and the children rejoiced, so that the joy of Jerusalem was heard from far off. On that day men were also appointed over the chambers for the stores, the contributions, the first fruits, and the tithes, to gather them into them from the fields of the cities, the portions required by the law for the priests and Levites. For Judah rejoiced over the priests and Levites who served. For they performed the worship of their God and the service of purification, together with the singers and gatekeepers, in accordance with the command of David and his son Solomon. For the days of David and Asaph, in ancient times, there were leaders of the singers, songs of praise and hymns of thanksgiving to God. So all Israel, in the days of Zerubbabel and Nehemiah, gave the portions due the singers and the gatekeepers as each day required, and set apart the consecrated portion for the Levites, and the Levites set apart the consecrated portion for the sons of Aaron. It just is really interesting about, just this picture you get in your mind of these two choirs on the top of the wall going around the city and singing, and just the rejoicing of the people within. And it's just neat to see what a celebration it was for them when they finally completed making this wall around Jerusalem to protect the city from ruin. And it started out in Nehemiah where he was lamenting that the city was in ruins, the gates had been burned with fire, and now the city is full of rejoicing. The people are able to see their wall restored. Let's go on to the last chapter of Nehemiah, chapter 13. On that day they read aloud from the book of Moses in the hearing of the people, and there was found within it that no Ammonite or Moabite should ever enter the assembly of God, because they did not meet the sons of Israel with bread and water, but hired Balaam against them to curse them. However, our God turned the curse into a blessing. So when they heard the law, they excluded all foreigners from Israel. Now, that's interesting, because here we see that there had originally been a curse against the Ammonites and Moabites, but here we say that God turned the curse into a blessing. But then the people, even though they knew that God turned the curse into blessing, they're still going to exclude the foreigners. So this was something that they were doing against God's, how God had turned it into a blessing instead. Now prior to this, Eliashib the priest, who was appointed over the chambers of the house of God, being related to Tobiah, had prepared a large room for him, where formerly they put the grain offerings, the frankincense, the utensils, and the tithes of grain, wine and oil prescribed for the Levites, the singers, and the gatekeepers, and the contributions for the priest. But during all this time, I was not in Jerusalem, for in the 32nd year of Artaxerxes, king of Babylon, I had gone to the king. After some time, however, I asked leave from the king, and I came to Jerusalem and learned about the evil that Eliashib had done for Tobiah by preparing a room for him in the courts of the house of God. It was very displeasing to me, so I threw all of Tobiah's household goods out of the room. Then I gave an order, and they cleansed the rooms, and I returned there the utensils of the house of God with the grain offerings of the frankincense. And here again is another instance where Nehemiah is saying, these people have disobeyed God. They've gone against what God wanted to accomplish, and it must have been kind of frustrating for him having come from was it Babylon or Chaldea or Syria, come back from there to try to fix up, establish, and help reestablish the city of Jerusalem, and then you got people who are disobeying God. So it must have been a little bit frustrating for him. But then he was able to right those wrongs as well. Going on to verse 10 of chapter 13 of Nehemiah, I also discovered that the portions of the Levites had not been given them, so that the Levites and the singers who performed the service had gone away, each to his own field. So I reprimanded the officials and said, "Why is the house of God forsaken?" Then I gathered them together and restored them to their posts. All of Judah then brought the tithe of the grain, wine, and oil into the storehouses. In change of the storehouses, I appointed Shelemiah the priest, Zadok the scribe, and Pedaiah of the Levites, and in addition to them was Hanan, the son of Zaccur, the son of Mattaniah, for they were considered reliable, and it was their task to distribute to their kinsmen. Remember me for this, O my God, and do not blot out my loyal deeds which I have performed for the house of my God and its services. And you can note here that this is in the Old Covenant, and Nehemiah is relying on his acts towards God rather than God's mercy for him through Christ. But of course, this is still in the Old Covenant. So, verse 15, in those days I saw in Judah some who were treading wine presses on the Sabbath and bringing in sacks of grain and loading them on donkeys, as well as wine, grapes, figs, and all kinds of loads, and they brought them into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. So I admonished them on that day. They sold food. Also men of Tyre were there, living there, who imported fish and all kinds of merchandise and sold them to the sons of Judah on the Sabbath, even in Jerusalem. Then I reprimanded them, the nobles of Judah, and said to them, "What is this evil thing you are doing by profaning the Sabbath day? Did not your fathers do the same, so that our God brought on us and on this city all this trouble? Yet you are adding to the wrath on Israel by profaning the Sabbath." It came about that just as it grew dark at the gates of Jerusalem before the Sabbath, I commanded that the doors should be shut, and that they should not open them until after the Sabbath. Then I stationed some of my servants at the gates so that no load would enter on the Sabbath day. Once or twice the leaders and merchants of every kind of merchandise spent the night outside Jerusalem. Then I warned them and said unto them, "Why do you spend the night in front of the wall? If you do so again, I will use force against you." From that time on they did not come on the Sabbath, and I commanded the Levites that they should purify themselves and come as gatekeepers to sanctify the Sabbath day. For this also remember me, O my God, and have compassion on me according to the greatness of your loving kindness. In those days I also saw that the Jews had married women from Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab. As for their children, half spoke in the language of Ashdod, and none of them was able to speak the language of Judah, but the language of his own people. So I contended with them and cursed them and struck some of them and pulled out their hair, and made them swear by God, "You shall not give to your daughters to your sons, nor take of their daughters for your sons or for yourselves." Did not Solomon king of Israel sin regarding these things? Yet among many nations there was no king like him, and he was loved by his God, and God made him king over all Israel. Nevertheless, the foreign women caused even him to sin. Do we then hear about you that you have committed all this great evil by acting unfaithfully against our God by marrying foreign women? Even one of the sons of Joiada, the son of Eliashib the high priest, was a son-in-law of Sanballat the Horonite, so I drove him away from me. Remember them, O my God, because they have defiled the priesthood and the covenant of the priesthood and the Levites. Thus I purified them from everything foreign and appointed duties for the priests and Levites, each in his task. And I arranged for the supply of wood at appointed times and for the first fruits. Remember me, O my God, for good. Now, there again, you see that where Nehemiah is making some corrections. He's correcting the people for the evil they had done. And he admits that one of his forms of correction is pulling out their hair. Now, I suppose there's other translations that might have translate that differently. But I mean, if that was the way he disciplined them, does God condone that just because that's what Nehemiah said he did? I'm not sure God condoned that form of discipline for them. I guess that's between him and God and Nehemiah. But whether or not it was condoned, probably the important message is that Nehemiah was very zealous to restore what God had for the nation. And I don't think the Bible ever condones wrong methods of discipline. God talks about that discipline is important, that we discipline our children, and that we discipline them firmly but lovingly, not to incite our children to wrath, but to discipline them firmly. But I do think it's important that we have a heart that's very zealous to serve the Lord and be obedient to him, and Nehemiah had that. And he was very concerned about restoring the city of Jerusalem back to the worship of God. So we thank God for that. Thank you for joining me today, and have a great day. God bless you, and we'll see you next time on Bible Book Club.